Hello everybody, and today we are doing a video I do once every year, which is me going over the progress I've made with the series I'm reading. So I'm gonna do it a little bit differently because I have done like zero preparation this time. So basically this is me just being lazy. But we are going to go through the months chronologically. I'm going to be going through the books that I've read, and we're going to give editing me more work because I'll have to divide it across started, proceeded, completed. I'm going to be writing it down as well on a notepad while I'm at it because otherwise I won't know the results until I edit this video. So yeah, here we go. I don't expect to have completed more than I started. Hopefully I will have completed and proceeded with more than I started, but I'm not even all that sure of that. But so the time frame we're looking at is July 2022 up until June 2023, June included, because normally that is where my previous statistics come from. So if we're looking at July 2022, I read 9 books in that month. Let's see if any of them are series. So first up we have The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. So this is a series I started. Yeah, I mean, what if I started and completed in the same time frame? I guess it counts double then, right? It will just count when we get to the correct month where I completed it. Okay, so this is a sort of like, it's a fantasy series, but it definitely has quite some sci-fi elements to it as well. In this one we're looking at a orc protagonist, even though, let's be fair, you don't really actually get many points in the book in which it's like clear that this is an orc. But so she is destined to kind of be sacrificed to the god of her society when she turns, I don't know, 12, let's say. That's pretty young, maybe it's later, who knows. But like right before this happens, the priest who's supposed to like officiate the ceremony kind of gives her an out and she takes it. I quite enjoyed The Unspoken Name, but I've forgotten a lot about it, and it's not one that really stuck with me. I know that I enjoyed it in the moment, and actually why am I saying that it might count as a completed series, because I still haven't read the sequel for that one. I just feel like this is a completed series for me, because I guess I don't actually feel much of an inclination to continue, though I probably will, but so yeah. So next up we have Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. So this is another series I started, not going down a good path because I still have to continue. So Annihilation is a sci-fi series. It is a trilogy, and it is taking place in what is called the Southern Reach. Basically this is like a version of our world, let's say, in which like on one side of our map or something there's this area, might even be called Area X, but I'm not entirely sure. And so over the course of the past decades, let's say, a couple of groups of scientists have been sent into this area, but they either never return, or when they return wrong. And so now a new group is going to go into this area and will be exposed to the weirdness that occurs in there. It's a very weird, absurd, unsettling read, and I really actually want to continue, so I should definitely note this down for probably, realistically speaking, 2024. Next up we have a book that I started, but like a series I started, but there is no sequel yet for this point. At this point in time I'm not entirely sure neither whether I would want to continue, and that is The Book of Night by Holly Black, which is another fantasy series in which we're following a sort of like woman with a con artist background. I'm not entirely sure anymore whether she is still a con, and this is a world in which there's like shadow magic involved, so people can steal other people's shadows, I want to say. I mean, this is like, did I read this in July? I would feel like I read this earlier, but I guess not, but I really forgot quite a lot about this. This book is definitely a book that kind of like has very mixed opinions about it. I also only gave it a 2 stars, so will I even continue if another book comes out in this? Maybe. I might want to see like what happens there. Though I do feel like this was also like just could have been a perfect standalone and that would have been it. Started another series. I started A Natural History of Dragons by Mary Brennan. Shocker, I also only read the first one and still haven't continued beyond that book. But so this is a series in which we're looking at this woman who wants to become a sort of like biologist for dragons. This is definitely frowned upon in the society and the day and age that she is living in. But luckily she finds herself a husband who is very supportive of it. Very supportive of this career, and so she is able to pursue it. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I really loved it, but I have still not continued. A series I proceeded in, and that would be The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So in July I read The Dragon Republic's second book in the Poppy War series, which is a series about a young girl who's orphaned during the Poppy Wars, who makes it her like goal to go into this academy that basically trains like warriors, and very soon they will go out into the real world and experience the real harsh realities of war. Okay, started another one, and July was really not a good one for these statistics, and that is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. So this is the first book in the Supernatural Investigation series. This is a middle grade series about this girl called Amari whose brother has gone missing, and then at some point in time she receives an invitation to go and apply to be part of the Supernatural Investigations training, which is basically what the sort of society that her brother was a part of. And so this is a magical society battling demons and stuff like that. And so yeah, that's what she'll be doing. In the month of August 2022, let's see, read 12 books. This can either turn out horrible, I guess. Series that I started, The Final Strive, first book in the Ending Fire trilogy by Sara El Arifi. This is a trilogy that is currently proceeding. The second book is on my TBR, for example, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. This is a series in which we're looking at a society that is heavily segregated by blood. So there are three colors of blood: red, blue and transparent, and the reds are very much on top and they very much suppress the people beneath them. Definitely they suppress the transparent bloods. These people are mutilated at birth and then kind of forced to be servants throughout their lifetime. But even the blue bloods, who have a slightly better experience in life, definitely are not given any of the opportunities to rise in society. So at some point in the history of this story, a group of blue bloods kind of took it upon themselves to steal red blood children in order to swap them out and then hopefully train these red bloods and kind of integrate them in their viewpoints and then send them back into red blood society, infiltrating the society from within and thus gaining access to the structures of power. Next up, that's one that I proceeded, let's continue to call it, which is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the comic book series. So in the month of August I read part of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Chosen Ones, and part of Volume 2. So this, I won't really go much into this. This is basically a comic book version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show, but it is going to kind of make some modernizations, and as well in terms of the thematics and the representation, there's a lot more there from the get-go, which might have only been there later within the series itself. I'm gonna consider Angel Volume 1 also as continuing. This is just one big comic book series that I'm gonna consider as a whole. So yeah, I read like 3 volumes in that within that month, and then I will consider it started. I haven't officially decided to DNF this series, but I did not have a good experience with this book in the month of August, which is The First Binding by R.R. Verdi, which is a story about this boy called Ari who basically, like, it's difficult to explain because this has multiple layers of narration, and I guess we'll just say that Ari is a master storyteller who will be telling his life story to a mysterious woman he meets on the road. Very reminiscent of The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and actually there are some comparisons of the first few pages that really are a little bit too close for comfort, I guess. This one didn't really work all that well to me. There were sections of it that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the story within the story a lot, but when it came to the frame story, it would kind of drag immensely for me. So I'm not entirely sure that I will be continuing with this one. And in the month of August, I completed The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So I managed to continue I managed to complete that series. And while I had a positive experience with it at that point in time, now I definitely wouldn't consider it one of my favorite series or like a particularly memorable series, though it is one of the first sort of like Asian fantasy series that I read. So in that sense, it's definitely always gonna be sticking with me because I definitely enjoy Asian fantasy a lot. Moving on to the month of September in 2022. So in September I read 11 books and we started another series. We started The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, which is the first book in the Sansi trilogy. This is a series that was supposed to continue this year, but it has been pushed back, so the next book, the second book, will only come out in 2024. So The Stardust Thief, we are following a girl who basically is a sort of like notorious merchant. She is accompanied by Jin, though nobody actually knows that he's a Jin, and she is recruited by the emperor to retrieve a certain artifact because she has this reputation of being able to find sort of like any artifact that she wants. But the emperor's son who's accompanying her on the quest is actually a notorious Jin hunter. I really enjoyed this world, and I very much was engaged and like intrigued the entire way throughout this book, so I'm very much looking forward to continuing on with that series. And so a little bit sad that it got pushed back to 2024, but we'll get there, we'll get it eventually. Now, I'm not going to count a reread, but I do have the reread of His Dark Materials that also took place in the final months of 2022. But so, yeah, that also happened then, but I'll not count it into my statistics. October. So, in the month of October, I read 10 books again. I mean, I was reading quite a lot in 2022, so we have a continuation of His Dark Materials, but I'm not going to include that here. And then, so far, it's looking good for the month of October because all of these are standalones. Yeah, perfect. Nothing new in the month of October. I mean, perfect would be to conclude something, right? But that's not exactly what happened. But at least we didn't start another series in the month of October. Looking at November, in November, did it already switch to November? I guess so. We also read 10 books, so more of His Dark Materials then. I guess I started this officially, but I like but this one is definitely one that do I count it? No, I won't count it, because this is a book that I DNF'd. I did not continue, like I did not even complete the book, so I don't need to include it in the stats, right? But that, for your information's sake, would be Gideon the Ninth, the first book in the Locked Tomb by Tamsin Muir, which is a sci-fi with some like fantasy elements, I guess, because it's like necromancy, but like in space, and like, yeah, the characters are just horrible characters. I just could not, I could not get along with them. I did not want to read about their experiences. And then we get to the next book, which is a proceeding, like I preceded this series, and that is An Echo of Things to Come by James Islington, November. Yeah, so I still need to read book 3. You're supposed to read these ones shortly after one another. I read book 1 in January 2022, book 2 in November 2022. Still have to read book 3. I'm absolutely going to reread these first 2 in order to make sure that I get the most out of book 3. But so, the Lycanius trilogy is like a really fun series in my opinion. It feels very much like traditional world building, but it's not. And so in this one we have like 3 friends who are on the onset of sort of like a examination to kind of pass their test to be recognized as a magician, but in this world magic is kind of frowned upon because some things have happened in the past, and so magic is very much bound to these strict rules, so they have to pass this test in order to be allowed to continue to have their magic. If they don't pass, their magic will be stripped of them. They become what is referred to as a shadow. But one of these 3 is really uncertain about their magical ability because their magical ability doesn't really seem to work all that well for them, and so the night before the examination. Somebody kind of comes in, warns him about not taking the test and kind of sets him on a different path. But as I indicated, you are supposed to read these close together because it is quite confusing. It plays with time as well, so there is also like a whole history behind that you kind of slowly unravel, and a lot of those details are already gone from my mind at this point in time. So I wrote that down, right? Yes. And I was gonna say we're in the clear for the rest of the month, but I also started another series which I haven't continued in the meantime, though I should have last month, which wouldn't have counted for this video in any case. But so, The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, first book in the Book and Rose series. One of the authors in this author duo has already been mentioned in this video, which is Mary Brannon, the author of A Natural History of Dragons. So my apologies, Mary Brannon. I've only read the first books in 2 of your series, but The Mask of Mirrors I do really love, and I do really want to continue in this series, but it is happening this month. I should be continuing with The Liar's Knot. I just need to get hold of it. But so, The Mask of Mirrors is a Venetian-inspired series in which we look at a con artist who used to be part of this very toxic kind of band that was like basically controlled by this toxic woman, and so they escaped they killed this toxic woman, escaped the city, but now decades later, or a decade later more or less, she and her friends return to the city to try and swindle a noble family, not really realizing that this noble family is actually in financial difficulties. Another interesting and fun element about this world is that there is also a type of Zorro-esque character called the Rook, and so you're trying to figure out throughout the book who this character is, and there's also some fun tarot elements in it. There is dream sequences, there are just a lot of interesting dynamics between characters where you're just really constantly kind of wondering like, are they working against one another, or are they seriously trying to help one another? So yeah, I really want to continue with that one, and it is happening this month. And then, final month for 2022, month of December, I read 13 books. When I see the numbers, I just go like, how many of those are firsts in series? So I started a series called The Vine Witch by Luann G. Smith. It is a series. They are more like companions, though I thought they were like really strictly companions books when I started, and they definitely are much more like linked than I originally thought they were. But so in the first one, The Vine Witch, we are following a character called Elena, I believe, who has been turned into a toad some 12 years ago. She was at the point of kind of being trained to be a vine witch, which is basically a witch that kind of helps nurture the vines for making wine. And she was turned into a toad at that point in time. 12 years later now, she returns to her human form, returns to the vineyard that she was connected to find that it is in financial difficulties, and it has actually been sold to a human, and a human who is very skeptical about the existence and powers of vine witches. It's very much more cozy fantasy, low stakes. There is definitely some like action, definitely more towards the second half of the book, but it definitely stays relatively cozy and light throughout. And then the second book focuses a little bit more on one of the other characters that you meet in this one, and then the third book, which I still have to read, will focus on another character as well. Then I will mention this book, but this is another book for which I am not continuing the series, and that is A History of What Comes Next by Sylvan Neuvel, Take Them to the Stars. So this is a series that is a sci-fi series looking at a sort of like fictional immortal race that basically like reincarnates into the next generation all the time and tries to steer human history in that regard. I did quite enjoy it, but I don't feel a need to continue past that point. So should I count it for started? Should I count it for started and completed? That sounds like fake because I didn't actually complete it. I did start it. Should I? But it also sounds and I'm not adding a I'm not adding a rejected column. So I'm not gonna include this one because I've already decided that this is not a series that I'm continuing with. Okay. And we are safe for the rest of December. Okay, moving into 2023. So we're at the midway point. Yeah, these statistics are not looking great. But to be fair, that's also what I expected to happen. I would have just loved to have been surprised, I guess. So for January 2023, I read only 7 books. So let's see what this did for these statistics. I started another series, of course. I started The Daughters of Izdihar, first book in the Ella Maxa duology by Hadir Elsbay. To be fair, while I enjoyed this book, I really have a hard time remembering much about it. Like, we have multiple protagonists, and like there is an interconnection between them. We follow 2 women and who are connected through one man. One is like married off to him, and the other is like the one that he is in love with, and both of them end up being connected to this sort of like rebellious society, which is the Daughters of Izdihar, who are fighting for women's rights in a fictionalized version of Egypt. That's all I'm gonna remember about this book. Next week, start another series. I started Kushiel's Dart, which is the first book in the Phaedra trilogy, which is part of the bigger series called Kushiel's Legacy. For bigger series like that, I consider them as smaller. I divide them up into different trilogies, so I won't consider this only completed once I've completed the entire Kushiel's Legacy. Once I've completed the Phaedra trilogy, it counts as a completed series. So this is a series in which we're looking at Phaedra, who's this girl who's marked with a red spot in her eye, which basically means that she's marked by the god Kushiel, who is a punisher god. And so she, as a consequence, takes pleasure in pain. And so she is being trained by this sort of like master spy, let's call him, to be a spy herself and to use her powers of observation to gain insights into some of the plots surrounding the monarchy, and she will be uncovering quite a big one, and about a third into the book the plot really kind of takes a shift, which I really enjoyed, and like things ramp up a whole lot. I continued a series as well in January. I continued the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. This is a YA series about basically children who have returned from a parallel world, and these parallel worlds are always like the world that perfectly suits them, the world where they are perfectly adapted to. And unfortunately, I actually enjoyed the beginning of this book when they were still in the regular world a lot more than I enjoyed the parallel world section, which is interesting because the first book in this series I didn't really enjoy because we never saw the parallel world. And so you would think that I would be more happy with this one. I am also more happy with this one because a lot of it took place in that parallel world, but actually my favorite section in this one is the section we had originally in the real world before they moved into the parallel world. Then I also proceeded in The Vine Witch by reading The Glamorous, so the second book in that series. Already gave you the synopsis, so not going to continue on with that. This is mentioned as being a series, but it's not a series, which is a Secret Project series by Brandon Sanderson, so I won't be including those because they are standalones. Moving on to the month of February. In the month of February I only read 4 books. Probably series, I guess. I continued in a series by reading Before Your Memory Fades by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I would have assumed that this was the last one, but actually the 4th one is going to come out recently, so I cannot say that I completed it at that point in time. But so Before Your Memory Fades is a they're basically kind of always companions. It is a series in which we're looking at time travel and the perspective of why would one travel back in time if you know that you cannot make any changes. Nothing you do in the past can change your present circumstances, can change the loss of a family member, for example. You cannot change the actions that have happened as a result of this past event. You can only go back in time to basically talk to somebody, and what we will find out throughout these different stories is kind of why people would want to go to that effort in what they are looking for in the past, knowing that they cannot actually make any changes. Next up, I started the Monk and Robot series by Becky Chambers. This is a cozy sci-fi series in which you're looking at a monk who basically wants a change of career. He becomes a tea monk in order to kind of basically give therapy through the tea brewing that he's doing. However, even that change of pace and that change of career path leaves him feeling unsatisfied at some point. So he goes out into the wild in search of the sound of chirping of crickets, and along the way he stumbles upon robots. Robots haven't been seen in society for a very long time, ever since they were given back their autonomy, and a very interesting dynamic ensues between the two. Started another series, of course. I started Ship of Magic, the first book in the Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb, and I cannot even consider that a completed series within this video because I did complete it, but I completed it in August, so that does not count for this video. Ship of Magic is the first book in the Live Ship Traders series, which is the second series in the Realm of the Elderling series by Robin Hobb. In this one we're looking at ships that come to life when 3 generations of captains aboard die aboard the ship, and so this is about to happen at the beginning of the book. Altia has lived her entire life anticipating the moment in which this ship will come alive. However, there is a spanner being put in the works that will mean that she will lose the ownership over this boat. There is a lot more going on to this story, but I absolutely love this series. It is my favorite fantasy series, I think, at this point in time, because each and every one of these books was a 5-star read. I cared so much for some of these characters, and while I absolutely despise some of these characters, I grew to love them by the end, and some characters to which I was like somewhat indifferent to, or I didn't think were like the worst characters ever in terms of like they weren't big evil geniuses. By the end I also had to review my opinion about them. So Robin Hobb is just really good at developing characters and at really fleshing them out, but also at making you change your opinion about a character. A lot of times in a series you kind of stay to the same pattern. Maybe somebody might have a redemption arc, for example. That definitely happens, but I don't feel like there have been as extreme cases as was the case here, where I absolutely was super annoyed by one character that I was always like, ugh, do we have to read from this perspective? In book 1 and in book 3 I was like, yes, a perspective from this character's point of view, give it to me. So, moving on to the month of March. So in March I read 9 books. Out of those 9, do we have some series? So yes, we have the first book in the God Killer series by Hannah Kaner. There is only 1 book out at this point in time, so I couldn't continue further on. This is a series in which we're looking at a God Killer, as the title indicates. So in this world, gods basically, it's a very interesting magic system actually. So the gods acquire more and more power the more that they are worshipped. However, at one point this resulted in a very massive battle between humans and gods, because gods had actually grown too powerful. And so at this point in time there are these god killers who are basically hired to kind of quash down starting religions in order to prevent them from becoming these overwhelmingly strong religions and these overwhelmingly strong gods. And so this god killer kind of stumbles upon a girl whose family is slaughtered at the beginning of the book, and we don't really know why, and so the god killer herself is also a little bit intrigued to figure out why. Really enjoyed this one. Also has disability representation because the god killer has a prosthetic leg. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It's a fun one. It's also a short one, which is very exceptional for fantasy. And then I completed A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, which is the second book in the Monk and Robot series. So Yay! To finally completing something. Start another series, but really I did not know that this is a series, and I'm really not I want to say that I won't continue, but probably I will, because in the end I did really enjoy this book, because it started off a little bit wonky. So we are talking about The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. So in this one, it's basically a You've Got Mail retelling, but that's basically my downfall, because You've Got Mail is one of my like comfort movies. I love this movie. You can say like there's nothing wrong with this movie, this is a perfect movie. But in the beginning I was just like comparing it too much to the movie, and it just like followed it a little bit too closely, or there was nothing interesting because of that sort of comparison with You've Got Mail. But then things started to get better, and I started to really dig the dynamic between the characters. So we're looking at this fantasy world in which basically there are these sort of like zombie type creatures, and there are these marshals who have to hunt them down. And so we are looking at one such marshal, and then an undertaker who kind of has to take these bodies in and take care of them. And they have a very much hate to love type of relationship. April, 13 books. Let's see what damage we did in that month. So yeah, do I consider that a series? I guess I can consider that. So I started, though did I start that in that month? Maybe it wasn't in that month, but in any case, in one of those months, I started the Dead Djinn universe by P. Jelly Clark, which is a interconnected universe. It mainly has novellas and then one bigger book, which is the book that I'm looking at now, which is A Master of Djinn, which, if it gets a sequel, will I read it? Maybe. I liked the novellas more within this world, and I ended up enjoying the big novel, and that is mainly because it is a detective type plot, and I don't like detective plots. But it is steampunk fantasy in a Egyptian inspired world. It's basically an Egypt that is at the top of like the country's hierarchy. Basically it is like the top power in the world at that point in time, because the Jinn like made their presence known, I don't know, 2 decades ago or even longer, and their presence in Egypt helped give Egypt a huge powerful role within human history. And so we're looking at that society, but then with steampunk technology into it. And I really, really enjoy the world building a whole ton, but that plot doesn't really work for me. Then I also proceeded in Live Ship Traders within that month by reading The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, as I indicated, another 5-star. I started A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow, which is the first book in a duology, which is the Fractured Fables duology. Personally, I think it should be a standalone. I will still read the second one, but I quite have some hesitations about it. In this one, we're looking at a girl with an incurable disease who kind of is very happy to have made it to her 16th birthday, and then on her 16th birthday a friend of her kind of throws her a Sleeping Beauty type birthday party, and then when she touches a spindle she finds herself in a parallel world where she kind of has to rescue the real Sleeping Beauty. Then we have The Lives of the Ajungo by Moses Ozi Utomi, which is the first book in the Forever Desert series. There is no next book yet, so maybe that's what I should consider them started and completed at the same time, because I cannot continue beyond this point. Yeah, maybe it should be completed and caught up. In which case I have to do my statistics all over again. But yeah, I will have, my editing me will have done that correctly, and I will kind of go through this list again, I guess, before coming to any conclusions. So this is actually started and caught up, but I will only do the caught up section of this once I've done the full stuff, because otherwise I'm confusing myself. In this one we're looking at a city that has no water, and the Ajungo basically are suppressing them in order to promise them water, however they never give them enough water, so the city always remains dependent upon the power of Jiajungo. So almost every year a couple of young people go out into the desert trying to find water, trying to find a future for their city. And so our protagonist, when his mother almost succumbs to dehydration, decides to also take this path, also to go in search of water, and the revelations that he uncovers along the way are pretty severe. Then I continued in the first Law series by Joe Abercrombie by reading Before They Are Hanged, second book in that series, which is a grimdark series, which, I mean, it's very impossible to describe because basically nothing happens. You're following a couple of characters from different parts of this world as they are, God knows what. There's one that is a northerner who kind of moves down to the south, where he has to deal with like the image people have of northerners. We have a sort of like lazy, entitled guy who wants to become a champion but doesn't really want to put in the effort to become a champion. Then we have a previous champion who was kind of broken in the war and who is now crippled and has become an inquisitor. That's our cast. Figure out the plots because I haven't figured it out. And then I started, of course, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, first book in the Drowning Empire series, which is another Asian-inspired fantasy series in which we have a island nation, and we are looking like mainly at two characters. We're looking at a smuggler who kind of finds himself being too good for his own good because he takes in strangers. He has this animal companion that he rescued. He's constantly pretending to be indifferent to what's happening around him, but then he's also like caught up saving the children of this island nation. And then the second main protagonist that we're following is the daughter of the emperor, who basically is trying to prove her word to her father, prove that she can master the bone shard magic that he famously maintains. Continued in the Fedra trilogy by reading book number 2, and moving on to the next month. What was this? April? So May. We are almost to the end of like this section. So I completed the Fedra trilogy by Jacqueline Carey by reading Kushiel's Avatar. So yeah, I really enjoyed the series a whole lot. It's not like a 5-star or anything like that, but I really had a great time with it. It's just that it like had its moments in which it would drag, and then it would have its moment in which it was like amazingly paced for me. So pacing wise, it was far from perfect for me. But I also started, of course, a duology, which is a Celestial Kingdom duology by Su Lin Tan, by starting Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which was a real surprise for me because I really enjoyed this one a whole lot. Another Asian-inspired fantasy in which you're looking at the Daughter of the Moon Goddess, shocker, I know, who basically at the beginning of the book kind of has to set out into the real world, but nobody's allowed to know who she is because her mother is kind of trapped somewhere, and people don't know that she had a daughter, but it's no longer safe for her to stay with her mother, so she goes out into the world where she kind of hides her identity, but she, through circumstances, finds herself being close to the crown prince, and there's a lot more that happens there, but basically she kind of ends up in this sort of like competition to be his companion. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Also has a love triangle that like, it's the first time in a long time that I read a love triangle, I feel like, because like for a time I was really done with them, and now I was like, ooh yeah, love triangles, loving it. Then, first book in a series. Yeah, these statistics are horrible, guys. So I read Those Above by Daniel Polanski, first book in the Empty Throne duology. I really need to read the second one because I don't feel like it's like super complex, but I do feel like it took me a while to get the world because it's like not spelled out to you, you know, you really like uncover it as you're going through this book. So basically you have like those above and you have those below, and so the ones who are at the top of society kind of like, it's not even that they really suppress the ones below them, they do, but they also just like don't even really think about them. They don't really have like they don't spend any energy or any effort on them, and then so we're following characters from both levels, as sort of like rebellion is starting to brew. Though I will say that that's really more towards the end of, like, does much happen in this book? Maybe not, but still, I was really hooked from a certain point onwards, and I really enjoyed this one a whole lot. I gave it 4.5 stars, so I do want to continue, and maybe I even have to reread those above in order to be sure to fully grasp what happens in those below. Leaving us to the final month for these statistics, the month of June. In the month of June I only read 5 books, so no way am I like completing these statistics. So I started by starting another series, of course, you know me. Of Blood and Fire, first book in The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. This I've already forgotten everything about. I was expecting this to be like a super dense fantasy series, but it's really not. Super accessible, fast paced as well, but it also was like nothing special. We're following like 2 childhood friends in a sort of like somewhat remote village who basically set off to kind of become men. They kind of have to do a trial to become men, and then during that trial they uncover something that hasn't been seen in the village for a very long time. We also see some talks about like the relationship between the politically dominant South and the politically dominant and the politically inferior North. And this also has elves in it, for example, but yeah. Alright, so I went through the list of the books that I started, or I guess proceeded with, and kind of looked at what couldn't I continue at the end of June 2023. And so there are 9 books that I caught up to throughout this period of time that we're looking at. 3 series I completed. That's really horrible. I really need to make sure that increases. 9 books that I proceeded with throughout this period, but 23 series that I started. So if we count off the proceeded, completed, caught up to section, we get to 21 series versus the 23 that I started. But mind you, I'm not entirely sure that I feel it's valid to count these the ones that I caught up with as like progress, because it's like they count double those, you know. So I'm not entirely sure of whether this was the better way to do this compared to how I did it last year. But in any case, what has become very, very clear is that I start way too many series. Is this gonna change? Probably not. Though I do have some that I still, like, I completed one at the very least in the month of August already. I do intend to complete 3 more series at the least within 2020. I completed 2, so yeah, there are some series, at least like 5 series or so, that I can think of that I will be completed or caught up to still within 2023, and I'm hoping that in 2024 I do a better job of staying on track with my releases, but also in kind of like going back to some of those series that I started a while back that I've never continued with. Some easy wins would be like the Serpent Gates series, which is the first one I mentioned here with the unspoken name. It's a duology, and the second book will earn me a completed. Same for the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology, though I really am very eager to read that second book. So it's more a case of like finding the time for it rather than like me dragging my feet on it or anything like that. So yeah, these statistics are always horrible. I've kind of made it a little bit better for myself by looking at that caught up section, but who am I kidding? Clearly I have a problem of starting series. So maybe my intention from now on should be to really pay attention to the catch-up book club, or like final book support club. No, what is it called? Final book support group, which is a regular readathon that Steph over at the channel Steph Love organizes, which very much focuses on the idea of finishing or proceeding in series that you've previously started. So I'm always kind of caught up unawares with this series, and I really should make an intention from now on to really take this more seriously. Make sure that when it comes around, I pick up something that I can continue. Because these statistics, they're not it. Though, actually, I'm now considering that for example, when it came to the Master of Jinn, I just counted it as started, but I didn't count the 2 other books in it. I feel like I've done this whole statistics thing completely wrong. Because the started and caught up, they're double. And the preceding is different from the completed. So if I would count some preceding, which also mean that I am caught up to the series, would I also count them double? My maths is really gone haywire on this. Yeah, so I counted a Master of Jinn as starting, but that means that I should count the Haunting of Tramcar 15 as proceeding, the Angel of Khan el-Khalili also as proceeding, and then a Judging in Cairo also as proceeding. March 2023, where we have a Master of Jinn. No, it's not March, it was April then. Though I also counted this series for caught up. So yeah, who knows how accurate these numbers are no longer accurate, but if we look at it like that, then actually I did a better job on that side of the boards, on the preceding and completed and caught up. Though if we're looking at it very strictly, we preceded and completed 17 series, and we started 23. Let's just ignore the caught up, right? I feel like this whole video has gone into chaos towards the end, but so yes. This is more accurate, because I was only counting these ones, and they don't just count one. These things count as proceeding in the series, so yes. Yeah, feel much better about this now. Not really. The conclusion remains the same. I need to proceed and complete more series. But so, with that, I am going to leave you guys and stop thinking about what counts for what, and hopefully get to some more series. Am I starting a series this month? No, I think I'm only completing or continuing series, so good start in the month of September. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know how you are doing when it comes to series. Are you, like me, a continual series starter who doesn't commit to continuing? Or are you actually on track and you kind of just tackle a series before you start another one, which would be much more healthy behavior. But so, hope you enjoyed this video. See you guys for the next one. Bye!